If Machiavelli were alive today, watching men struggle through the chaos of modern love, he wouldn't speak in romantic language. He wouldn't hand out comforting illusions. He would cut straight into the anatomy of desire, the machinery behind affection, and the brutal logic that shapes what people call love. He would tell you that love has never been the innocent force people want it to be. It has always been a negotiation between fear and advantage, longing and power, vulnerability and self-preservation. He would begin by telling men that most of their suffering comes from assuming that love is symmetrical. You think your devotion is measured the same way her devotion is. You believe your loyalty feels the same in her body as it feels in yours. Machiavelli would shake his head. He would remind you that human beings do not love equally, and they do not fear equally. Whoever fears loss more deeply is the one who becomes controlled. Whoever needs reassurance more urgently becomes predictable. He would say that the moment a man loves without awareness, he gives away more than affection. He gives away leverage. Machiavelli would not tell men to stop loving. He would tell them to stop loving blindly. He understood that relationships aren't destroyed by malice. They collapse because one person is operating with a map while the other walks in the dark. And in modern dating, that darkness has become thicker. Men often mistake emotional intensity for connection. They mistake attention for commitment. They mistake consistency for loyalty. Machiavelli would warn that every affection you receive comes wrapped in motive, even if the motive is simply her need to feel valued, desired, or secure. Nothing is ever free of motive, and pretending otherwise is the road to heartbreak. He would tell you that affection is powerful but unstable. It changes when circumstances change. It shifts when incentives shift. If a woman feels elevated by your presence, she opens herself to you. If she feels diminished beside you, she closes herself off. Not because she is cruel, but because survival instincts govern far more of love than people like to admit. Machiavelli would say that affection is not maintained by goodness alone. It grows when a man is seen as competent, self-reliant, emotionally grounded, and not easily bent by uncertainty. A woman's respect is not kept by promises, it is kept by presence. He would warn men that the greatest danger in love is the loss of self. Once a man dissolves into the relationship, he stops being the very figure she was drawn to. When your world becomes too centered around her, she feels a quiet imbalance, not because she dislikes your devotion, but because it signals that your life is no longer larger than the relationship. The paradox Machiavelli would point out is simple. When a man abandons his mission, he inadvertently weakens the very bond he is trying to preserve. You don't maintain love by clinging. You maintain it by moving forward, building, expanding your identity beyond her approval. He would speak about conflict in a way modern ears rarely tolerate. Machiavelli understood that people reveal their authentic priorities when pressure is applied. He would tell men not to be frightened by disagreement. Not all conflict is destruction. Sometimes it is clarity. When you avoid every uncomfortable truth out of fear of losing her, you lose yourself first. And once you lose yourself, the relationship becomes a slow erosion rather than a shared path. Machiavelli would teach that a man must be able to articulate boundaries without trembling, otherwise his silence becomes the soil where resentment grows. He would also point out something few men want to acknowledge. Desire has a rhythm, and it does not reward those who chase endlessly. When you make yourself too accessible, too eager, too ready to surrender, you flatten the emotional landscape. Machiavelli would remind you that tension is not the enemy of love. Indifference is. A man who has his own center, his own gravity, generates a natural pull. A man who orbits around the woman loses the very magnetism that once drew her near. Modern men often confuse love with availability, forgetting that availability without depth becomes dullness. Then he would turn the mirror around and speak to men's insecurities. He would say that many men try to buy loyalty with sacrifice, thinking that the more they give, the more she will stay. But loyalty is not purchased, it is inspired. A woman stays not because you bleed for her, but because she senses strength in your direction. She stays because she feels the stability of your inner world. She stays because you are not easily rattled by uncertainty. Machiavelli would tell men that emotional steadiness is more attractive than emotional generosity. Generosity touches the heart, but steadiness protects it. And finally, he would deliver the message most men resist. Love is safest in the hands of a man who knows he can survive without it. That doesn't mean detachment or coldness. It means sovereignty. It means the ability to walk away from anything that destroys your dignity. Machiavelli understood that the man who cannot walk away becomes owned by his longing. The man who can walk away earns a different kind of respect, not just from the woman, but from himself. If Machiavelli spoke to modern men today, he would not teach them how to win women. He would teach them how to stop losing themselves. He would remind them that love is not a battlefield where one side must conquer the other. It is a space where two people negotiate trust, fear, desire, and influence. The man who enters that space with awareness suffers less. The man who enters blindly becomes a casualty of his own illusions. He would leave men with this final understanding. Love becomes meaningful only when it is built on clarity, not fantasy. And clarity requires courage. The courage to see yourself honestly, the courage to accept reality as it is, and the courage to remain whole, whether she stays or goes. That is what Machiavelli would tell modern men about love. And it is nothing like you were raised to believe.